Hi, everybody. My name is Joanne Woodland. I'm the Senior Health and Safety Advisor with WorkplaceNL in this Prevention Services Department. And today I'm going to talk to you about what's new in the certification training, I guess in the certification training unit in prevention services. I think this is relatively a short presentation, so but certainly feel free to take stretch breaks, micro breaks wherever needed. We usually recommend that you take them every 30 minutes. I don't imagine this will be much longer than 30 minutes, but certainly take your stretch breaks if you need to. Okay, so the learning objectives today, basically I'm going to talk to you about what the certification training unit is, or I'll be referring to it as the CTU. I'm going to talk to you about what we do, what kind of work we do, what we're involved in, and then I'm going to give you a little update about some of the training standards because there's a lot of stuff going on with a lot of different standards right now and in the past year and upcoming in 2023. So I'll kind of break it down like that. I'm going to talk about what's happened over the last year, and then I'm going to talk about what's coming and what you can expect in the new year. And one of those major changes is with the new committee representative designate training standard. So there's actually a whole new standard, whole new course coming with that. So I will focus on that towards the end because that's pretty important. It affects a lot of our stakeholders, employers, and workers because it is the standardized training for all provincially regulated employers that are required to have an OHS committee in the workplace. Okay. So first of all, I'll just kind of explain where we fit into prevention services. We are in the Prevention Services Department in WorkplaceNL. We have 4 different units in prevention services. We have the advisory services, the OSH education unit, the analytical unit, and of course us, the CTU. So the advisory services unit provides OH&S advisory services to employers and oversees the priority employer program. The objective of the priority employer program is to assist employers experiencing challenges in preventing injuries and costs associated with these claims. Under the program, WorkplaceNL acts as a strategic partner by providing health and safety expertise to the employers to help them with their OSH program development, implementation, and enhancement. This unit currently has 12 people, 1 industrial hygienist, 1 musculoskeletal injury advisor, 1 senior health and safety advisor, and 9 field staff advisors. The OHS unit, they are responsible for developing and delivering most of our own WorkplaceNL educational material, so such as webinars, workshops, publications, resources, all that great information that we put out comes from the education unit. We have a multitude of staff in that unit, some OHS consultants, and they're, like I said, they're involved in developing that material, and we have a schedule of workshops and webinars always on our website, and we're constantly putting out information for our stakeholders and our employers. The initiative of the Symposium comes from the education unit, and that whole production is part of their planning and preparation. So one of their bigger, I guess, goals for the year is putting together that event. Then we have the analytical unit. So that is a group of staff that I call our statistical people, or they're responsible for putting together and maintaining all of our stats, basically. So, at WorkplaceNL, everything is, I guess, monitored, and like we record all the information about how many claims happen in a certain industry, what types of claims are happening, different information, statistical information about different industries and what's happening in those industries, what types of injuries are happening in certain industries, all that stuff. And we put out information on that as well. So we have fact sheets for every industry, the types of injuries that are happening. And it just gives us an idea. I guess the analytical unit and the education unit work hand in hand, because once we look at that information, we say, okay, well, what types of injuries are happening, what's going on. We can then focus our educational efforts towards, if we're having a lot of back injuries, then okay, if there's a lot of slips, trips, and falls, those are indicators to us where we need to focus our efforts. So the analytical unit is very important to us, and certainly a great part of the department as a whole. Then there's the certification training unit. So we're a small unit. We only have 3 certification training specialists, an OHS committee coordinator, and myself, the senior health and safety advisor. So I always say we're small, but we're pretty mighty, because once you see today when I talk about what it is we do, it's pretty substantial. And we are basically responsible to administer and oversee 10 safety training standards throughout the province. And the OHS Act and regulation here in the province gives WorkplaceNL the legislative responsibility to do that. So, that's why we do it, is because we're legislative, excuse me, we're legislatively required to do that within the province. So I guess I'll get on and start talking about it. So these are basically all the certification training standards that we currently oversee. 8 of these are mandatory, 2 of them are voluntary. Well, 3 really, because MSI is voluntary, Supervisor Health and Safety, and the traffic control level 2 only is voluntary, but the level 1 is a mandatory course. So, each of our training standards, we have them available on our website. You can go in and, just use the main, I find it most effective to use the main search engine on our website and just type in certification training standard. If you're looking specifically for a certain one, like if you were looking for fall protection or first aid, just type that in on the main search engine, and that should bring you right to the standard. And we actually have the standards online, and that the standards will outline the course requirements, the learning objectives, the certification process for trainers and training providers and trainers. I guess one common misconception that I find out there is that people get confused. They think, okay, well, you're responsible for the training standards, so you do the training, right? You got to go to WorkplaceNL to get the training. We don't do the training for these standards from WorkplaceNL, but what we do is we approve the people that can teach these. So we have certain standards and expectations outlined in these standards and qualifications that the people who teach these standards must have. And, I'll talk a lot about that process in the next few slides, like becoming a trainer and how you do that. But that's one thing that, I need everybody to understand is WorkplaceNL does not do the training for all these standards. That would be a huge undertaking. We have hundreds of trainers and training providers. Well, we have hundreds of trainers, I should say, not training providers, in the province that are teaching and getting this information out to employers and workers. So like I said, the CTU, we're legislatively responsible to do this, and that's why we do it. Administering the standards means fulfilling our legislative responsibilities. Under the Workplace Health, Safety and Compensation Act, Section 20.2, Duties of the Commission, it says we must develop standards for certification of persons required to be certified under Occupational Health and Safety Act and approve the training programs for certification. So I guess there's a couple of different things going on. Like, we develop the training standards. So we develop those and put all the information in there. There's a couple of these standards most of them, we develop the training program ourselves. So if we go back, I guess, to the previous slide, like we develop MSI, OHS committees, power lines, supervisor, traffic control, confined space, fall protection, first aid. Those ones we don't create, we don't develop those. So what happens with those, if somebody wants to teach confined space, for example, they would have to submit a curriculum to us to get approved. So it's almost like a two-step thing. You have to submit a curriculum or have permission to use an approved curriculum for confined space entry, and then you would have to be approved to become a trainer for that standard. So I guess it's a little more complicated for the ones that we don't have standardized curriculums for, but certainly, you know, there's plenty of those training programs approved and stuff within the province. So in turn, this means we're responsible for the following. The first step is to develop the standards of the certification for each of those courses listed on the previous slide. This means developing a training standard to outline the education, training, and criteria required to be an instructor. The training standard also outlines the approval of the training providers and the criteria they must meet for the delivery of the training. Once the standard is developed, the next step is to approve the training programs. So again, like those I talked about, the fall protection, confined space, first aid, those would actually have to be submitted to us to be approved. Certifying persons who meet the standard involves assessing the individual trainers for approval. For those of you who may already be an approved trainer, I guess listening today, you be familiar with that process, that the first step is you have to submit an application, and you know, we check to see if you meet the criteria that's outlined. So, you know, do you have adult education experience? Do you have a current certificate in the course that you want to teach? You know, do you have X number of years work experience in that area? Those are the kind of things, again, all outlined in the standard. And then you submit that information to us. And if we say, yeah, okay, you're qualified to become a trainer, then the next step is you have to do an assessment. So we would then send you out information to say, okay, we're going to do an assessment with you. That will involve you coming to us, presenting a couple of topics from the curriculum in a practical activity. And you would actually have to pass that trainer assessment to become a trainer. So a couple of step process, but like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about the trainer assessment in a few more slides. But we're also legislatively responsible and involved with monitoring training providers and trainers. So once, you know, we approve you and we say you're good to go and go out and teach these curriculums, you know, we have to keep an eye to see that there are standards, that our standards are met, because we have certain standards outlined, and you know, the training has to be consistent and you know, up to a certain quality. So part of that is, you know, we could do a trainer audit. We could come sit in your classroom and actually audit you while you're training. We could request your participant evaluation forms to see what your students are saying about you. We could actually call students that sat in your class and kind of, you know, ask them a few standard questions just to see, get an indication of kind of what's going on in the classroom. So it's just a part of our quality control, I guess. You know, once we approve you, it's not just you're gone and you can do whatever. You know, we are responsible for monitoring once you're approved. Oops, sorry, I'm going backwards. All right, this slide here just gives you an idea of how much safety training is actually happening in the province. It's a lot. This is broken down by each standard, and up the left-hand side is the number of training certificates for each standard. So, I mean, this is from 2015 to 2021, but there's a lot of training happening, and as a result, we're approving a lot of training uh, trainers and training providers. It's like a constant process, and for whatever reason within the last year, we've just found a real increase in the number of trainers that we are approving. So I guess, that just tells us that there's more demand for training. So, um, you know, that's an increase for us. On an average, we actually assess about 100 trainers a year. So it's about 8 per month. So we do trainer assessments monthly. And out of those 100 trainers, there's an average of about 82 passing each year. So there's about 20% that actually don't pass the trainer assessment process. So that being said, I wanted to put in a few slides on becoming a trainer and the process because, you know, we want to see people be successful in the trainer assessment process. The more training out there, the more quality training happening, it's better for everybody, all the stakeholders that are at interest, and the employers have more options to send their workers for training. Workers have more access. So yeah, I just thought I'd stick in a few slides to talk a little bit about how the process works and how you can be better prepared for a trainer assessment. So the process starts by applying. Like I said, once you apply, we will ask you to sign a code of ethics. We will ask you for your certificates and your resume, and you will send all that in to us. And if you pass that, then the application is processed. You either don't meet the requirements and it's okay, sorry, you don't meet the requirements, you cannot become a trainer. But if you do meet the requirements, you move on to the trainer assessment process, and we schedule you for an assessment. These days, we can actually do virtual assessments for certain standards. Not all of them. We don't do virtual trainer assessments for confined space or fall protection. And I think that's it. And that's due to, I guess, there's a practical nature to those courses, and they just become very difficult to assess virtually. Like, people are actually performing harness inspections, donning harnesses in these assessments, and that becomes very difficult to do virtually. In confined space, people are actually showing us how to enter a confined space vertically, horizontal, approaching a confined space. Like, it's just difficult to do that virtually. So we haven't gone down that road yet. Not to say that we won't in the future, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. So once you complete the assessment, you'll be notified, okay, you passed the assessment, so now you become a WorkplaceNL approved trainer. Or unfortunately, you didn't pass the assessment. Here's why. Here's where you need to improve. There's always recommendations. We encourage you to reach out to us if you don't pass, to have a chat about, where it is you went wrong and what it is you need to do to get there. And there's always there's an opportunity to come back and be reassessed. Depending on how you scored in the assessment, that will dictate how long you have to wait to come back to be reassessed. But you certainly do have another opportunity to do that, and we encourage you to review those recommendations. We do put a lot of work into the reports, and we give you clear recommendations on where it is you went wrong and where you need to improve. Okay. So preparing for a trainer assessment. So you'll be giving once we say, okay, you can come in and do a trainer assessment, we give you 2 assigned topics and a practical. So if it's from one of our standardized curriculums, it'll be right out of the standardized curriculum. Okay, so for supervisor, you're going to talk to us about characteristics of a supervisor, this particular section, pages 35 to 42. This is what we want you to cover, and here is the topic. The second topic is workplace inspections, and it's page, whatever, 50 to 60 in the facilitator's guide. We want you to just stick to what you've been asked to present. Only the topics, only the pages that we've asked you to present in the facilitator's guide. You are expected to come in there, there could be anywhere from 2 to 3 assessors in the room, and we understand that that's very intimidating, and people do get nervous. I mean, you can say what you want. Everybody who gets assessed is going to have some, element of nervousness to it, but we just want to try to reiterate that just treat us like you would a classroom. We want you to come in and treat us exactly like students. We're not WorkplaceNL staff, we're actually students in your class, and we're actually going to kind of role play a little bit for that. So like, when we introduce ourselves, we'll say, hi, I'm Joanne Woodland, Senior Health and Safety Advisor from WorkplaceNL, but for today's purposes, I'm going to be an employee from ABC company who just got appointed to supervisor, and I'm here to do the training. So we kind of do that little bit of role play so that, you get, okay, this is a student in the class. I know nothing. You pretend that I know nothing about this course. We could actually, during the assessment, if you're asking questions, we could give you back the wrong answer just to mimic that classroom environment. Or we might say nothing at all when you ask a question, because everybody knows in the classroom, like sometimes you can ask a question and nobody responds. So like, how would you handle that situation? So we try to mimic the classroom exactly, to see how you would think on your feet and deal with that. It's important to treat us like a classroom and not assessors. If you're doing one of our standardized curriculums, like I said, you would actually have to complete a course content review in advance of the assessment. And that course content review is like a webinar that you'll sit through. And that actually takes you through and gives you pointers on, how the course should run, how any practical activities should run, and you should do them exactly. Like I can't stress this enough. Like for the standardized courses that we have it laid out exactly as we want this taught in the facilitator's guide. So it's in the notes of the PowerPoint slides. You just got to make sure you cover everything in that facilitator's guide verbatim, like just exactly as it's laid out. And you should be fine. If the practical activity is to trying to think for practical activity now, conduct a mock meeting, say in the committee one, then you do it exactly as it is laid out in the facilitator's guide. So if it says break the classroom into groups and, have them review this information, then you're going to go through these questions with them. Do it exactly as it says, and you should be good with that. The trainer assessment tool is given to you in advance. So the trainer assessment tool is the thing we score you on. So we're actually sitting there with that trainer tool in front of us at the assessment. And that says, okay, section 1, for example, did they do introductions? Did they cover the emergency response plan for the building? Did they cover the importance of training and did they introduce their 2 learning topics and what they're going to do today? So if all that's laid out on that trainer assessment tool, you're being marked and getting marks for each one of those things listed out there. So, don't assume you come in there and, well, I don't need to do introductions because we already know each other, that type thing. You do everything as it's laid out on the assessment tool. If the assessment tool says we're giving you marks for asking the class, do you have any questions? Then you make sure you ask us, do we have any questions? There's also a criteria there that says, did the trainer ask open-ended questions? So if you don't ask open-ended questions, you will get 0 on that. So make sure you review the trainer assessment tool. It outlines the scoring criteria and we follow it exactly as it is. You must follow the facilitator's guides, instructions. So I touched on that, yes. And the only other thing I can say about preparing for trainer assessments, if you have questions, while you're preparing for a trainer assessment, please reach out and ask us. Give me a call, give one of our certification training specialists a call. Don't wait till the day of the assessment to ask, or you might think, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask that. Well, ask us, because if you're not allowed, or if it's something that we can't tell you, then we'll say that. But 9 chances out of 10, we can usually give you some guidance on what it is you're wondering about. Okay. So quality assurance, as I mentioned, we are responsible for quality assurance of training. I talked a little bit about these things, but it's something that we take very seriously and we're very committed to. It's equally as important to monitor the effectiveness of approved training and training providers as it is to have an effective approval process. So we put a lot of effort into our approval process. We put just as much effort into monitoring the quality assurance of training. Our quality assurance involves monitoring training programs. So at any time we could request to review your curriculum. So again, that's for the ones that we don't standardize. So if it's confined space file protection, we could, ask you for a copy of it to ensure it's up to par. And we would do that because there's times throughout the year, and I'll talk about this when I talk about a couple of the training standards. Things change, like legislation changes, CSA standards get updated. So when those things happen and they affect topics that are in your curriculum, we'll send out notices and we'll say, listen, this has changed. You need to update that in your curriculum. So from time to time, we can ask to see your curriculum to see if you've done that. Recently there were some changes to CSA standards, which resulted in us sending out a notification. So yeah, I'll talk about that when we talk about the file protection, because that is one standard that would be an example of that. And I talked about how we do trainer audits, and we can come sit in your classroom, do a trainer assessment. We can sit in virtually, which is something new to us, but is something since COVID that we do now. We can request those evaluation forms, or like I said, talk to the students that were in your class. If something comes about and there's non-compliance identified, it's addressed. So that then launches an investigation, and not something we like to do, but it's something we do, and there are consequences for trainers and training providers that do not adhere to our standards. All right, so what's new with certification training? So let's think about the last, when I say what's new, I'm going to tell you what happened or what's new over the last year or so. So basically, COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of people, I'm sure, and that was certainly applicable for us as well. I like to say after COVID, we changed the way that we do business, and virtual reality hit us really quickly. We had to adapt quickly to the public health restrictions, which impacted the training world dramatically. I mean, all of a sudden, training really, you always typically had 15 to 20 people in a classroom training, and now all of a sudden, because of these health restrictions, you couldn't have 15 or 20 people in a room anymore. You just weren't allowed. So, okay, but safety training still needed to happen because industry was still happening, work was still happening. So training still had to happen. So we pivoted towards virtual learning. And that was something that we hadn't gone down the road of, but we had to do that, and we had to do it quickly. So we took the standards that we issue and like the committees and the power lines, stuff like that, the ones that we standardize and send out. And we had to write some guidelines on how you could teach these virtually. So to allow trainers and training providers that option. So they could now train these courses virtually. So you had to apply to be approved to teach virtually. So if you are a trainer and you want to teach your course virtually, you still have to apply to us. And the reason behind that is because we need to confirm that that you have the tools and the right platforms to do the things virtually that we want you to do, So, we shifted kind of the guidelines. For example, obviously our committee's standard was written that you break the class into groups or you do a class discussion. So now we got guidelines to say, okay, well, you use a chat box or you use a breakout room or you have to do this virtually. Like we'll give instruction on how to do it virtually. So we want to confirm that you have the tools and the platforms to be able to teach virtually. So that's all that is. It's not that you got to do a trainer assessment or anything like that. It's simply an application and we ask you a few questions about the tools you have and do you understand, how to teach this virtually. We also do trainer audits virtually now. We mostly stick to like if you're teaching virtually, then we can audit virtually. That's how that works. So we've sat in on a lot of virtual training because we needed to do that because it was virtual learning was a big learning curve for us. It was new to us and we wanted to get out in the virtual classroom to see how things were going and it was I'd say it was a learning curve for everybody, but I really feel and I've seen that it works well and I'm glad that it happened. I'm certainly not glad that COVID happened, but I'm glad that this virtual learning opportunity came about for us. I think it's great for accessibility. Like, we've always had trainers and training providers trying to put off courses. There's workers in remote locations that need training, and then training gets canceled because there's just not enough people, and you know, it's not feasible for the trainer to go to this remote location and conduct training. So it just makes training more accessible. It's something you got to get used to, and but it can be done effectively. It's challenging. Um, it, but you can. It's challenging to make it engaging, but there are ways to make it engaging, and we're trying to improve that all the time. And actually, any new standards that come out for us now, like the new committee standard, will actually have virtual instructions in that. So it'll be like, okay, you can take this and you can teach it in the class or you can teach it virtually, and the instructions will be there for that. So it'll be like, okay, instead of normally you would do the module review questions, you'd hand them out. So now virtually you're going to use a polling feature or something like that. So yeah, anyway, it's pretty neat. Yeah, so I think that covers all of that there. Supervisor Health and Safety Recertification came out in June of 2022. We launched that. So that's one of our non-mandatory training courses, but very, very popular. Great uptake on it. We're really pleased with that. But we came out with it and it was valid for 3 years. So you don't have to do the 2-day training to recertify. You just have to do this recertification. And we have a new um, learning management system that we put this out on, and it's online and it's free. So you don't have to go back in the classroom for 2 days. It's you can go to the classroom if you want to. It's a half day in class and it's still provided and you can pay for it through a training provider. But you can register for it on the CTR and it's free. And we actually developed that in our new learning management system. And yeah, that was pretty neat too. I got to say, this is us branching into online learning as well, which we didn't do a whole lot of in the past either. We did have the committee's research online, but now we're going to be moving towards more of our own online learning. So two separate things, two words that I'm using is virtual learning and online learning. When I refer to virtual learning is basically you're still in a classroom, you're just in a virtual classroom. It's still live, there's an instructor, you have to be there at a certain time. You participate, you have to have a camera on, it's interactive. The online learning is yourself logging into a course, doing a module when it suits you, logging out, going back in when you have time. It's doing a course online yourself. There's no interaction with other people or, you don't no virtual classroom or anything like that. So Yeah. It's accessible in the CTR marketplace. There's the link. The other big thing is you cannot let your certificate expire. So it's the same as the committees. Once your certificate, your valid 2-day supervisor certificate expires, you're no longer eligible to do the recert. You actually have to go back and do the 2-day training again. So CTR will send you notifications starting, I think, like 6 months before and 3 months before your certificate expires to let you know your certificate's soon going to expire. You need to look at, doing your recert. So you need to get in and do that recert before the training expires. Confined space entry. So we made some changes to the confined space entry standard as well this year. WorkplaceNL is continually monitoring the quality, integrity, and delivery of training to ensure it is effective, current, and meets the needs of workers. Through consultation with OSH Division of Digital Government and Service NL, so I'm going to call them OSH Division from now on, but that's their official title now, is OSH Division of Digital Government and Service NL. They're always changing their name, but it's basically Service NL, OSH Division, the OHS officers, the ones that enforce legislation, come out to the workplace to enforce legislation. We do a lot of work with them. Everything we do, anything we change, any of these standards we develop, there's always consultation with our stakeholders. Excuse me. So through consultation with OSH Division, it was noted that there are wide variations of confined space entry rescue plans amongst employers that were required to have rescue plans on site. So, the officers are the ones that are going out into the workplaces and writing directives and doing inspections and things like that. And they were noticing a very wide variation of confined space entry rescue plans. So we kind of come back to the table and we assess that and we go, okay, well, what can we do to improve that? So to address those concerns, we do more consultation. So we haul in some people, we make a technical advisory committee, we haul in people from the industry, WorkplaceNL, and the OSH division, and we sit around the table and we go, okay, so what can we do here? So we decided WorkplaceNL enhance the learning objectives surrounding confined space entry rescue to make sure that the trainees are equipped with the rescue planning knowledge upon completion of the Confined Space Entry Certification training course. So the training providers are required, we enhanced the learning objectives and we then issued that out to the training providers to say, okay, this is what you have to cover on confined space entry rescue plans. We gave you the exact learning outcomes, and they had to update their curriculums and they had to notify us of when this was done. And if they didn't, they were no longer certified to teach these courses. So this ensures that the training on the topic is more consistent and it covers the necessary content. So to try to close that gap a little bit, that's what we did. We kind of standardized a little piece, a small piece of the confined space entry, the standard. It is standardized. We do tell people what needs to be in the training. Of course, that's outlined in the standard, but we felt we needed to get more specific on that topic because there was such a wide range of knowledge and rescue plans in the workplace. So that was a good piece of work done there. Went over fairly well. Fall protection, I mentioned that we made there were some updates to CSA standards. So a couple of big things happened with fall protection. Updates to the CSA standards were complete. From time to time, CSA standards get revised and we communicate that, which sometimes results in changes to curriculums. In 2022, the Pan-Canadian OHS Reconciliation Agreement was signed. This agreement seeks to harmonize legislation related to PPE, occupational exposure limits, and safety training to help address barriers to trade that companies may experience when doing business across provincial and territorial borders. As a result, in Newfoundland, 4 new CSA standards that relate to fall protection equipment were added to legislation. So that's important. Um, that's an example of a notification. So you've got a standardized approved curriculum for fall protection approved by WorkplaceNL, but that was approved 3 years ago. All right, so we're letting you know things have changed. You need to update this in your curriculum. So we sent out that notice, and again, similar to Confined Space, you had to let us know when you had that done. And if you didn't notify us that it was done, then you were no longer certified to teach. The other big thing that happened with fall protection, which is huge, and I mean, it's just been talked about for years, and I'm so glad to see it finally happen because it was just another one of those big gaps that we identified. There were so many, and there's so many different methods to calculating fall clearance calculations, and we're not saying, WorkplaceNL is not saying that they are wrong, but with the wide variety of ways to do the calculations, it was just creating I guess it was creating difficulties and inconsistencies affecting the students' comprehension. So it was something that wasn't going over real well in the classroom. We saw that in trainer audits. And the other thing we saw when we were doing trainer assessments was this was something that trainers struggled with. You know, they were doing it many different ways. They were doing it wrong a lot, and it was causing them to fail trainer assessments. So we standardized the fall clearance calculations. We did this again in consultation with OSH Division, and we developed a technical advisory group. We brought in people from the industry. We consulted them. We said, this is what a method that we are proposing. It's a little simpler. We feel that it's easier to comprehend. We're going to put it out there. We're going to get all the trainers and training providers to teach the same way. So that way, if you do the course, because the other thing is, you know, the people that work in this industry, they're in it for years, and they're recertifying, they're doing the research, they're doing the course, and each time if they're going to different training providers, they're getting a different method. So, you know, this creates consistency across the board. To address these concerns, following consultation with OSH Division and the Technical Advisory Group, WorkplaceNL standardized free fall distance and minimum clearance calculations to ensure consistency amongst training providers and trainers, and to improve the students' understanding of this learning objective. Training providers and trainers were required to either attend a live webinar or view a recorded session discussing the changes. Training providers, we gave them actually the slides that we want them to incorporate in their presentations now on free fall distance and minimum clearance, and we again standardized that little piece of their course, and we said this is how you have to teach this. We also developed this poster, and it's available for distribution. We will have it at the symposium, and my coworker Mark Kiley and a representative from the NLCSA are having a session as well in the symposium, actually just talking about this calculation. So this is, again, it's pretty huge. We're pretty excited about it. So we're going to be explaining a little bit more in that session about it. So that's what's happened. So like, that's why I say we're really busy. We have a lot going on and a lot of different standards. What do we got going on next? Well, the first aid is kind of partially happened in 2022, but there's more happening. There's going to be more happening in 2023. Even though we released our first aid standard in March of 2022, there's still lots of work to happen with the implementation of this newest standard in 2023. The implementation of our newest training standard to ensure quality and effective first aid training is developed to workers in the province. Again, we established a team in 2021 to review how first aid was being managed in consultation with the approved training providers, OSH Division, and OSH division, there were several areas recognized where updates were needed to bring first aid to the same level as other WorkplaceNL certification training standards. Those included developing a new first aid certification training standard based on the CSA standard ZAD 1210. First aid is a little different than our other standards in that WorkplaceNL doesn't approve the first aid trainers. What we do is approve the first aid training providers, and then the training providers approve their own trainers. But what we do is we oversee, like those training providers have to submit to us their approval process for approving trainers. I know that's really complicated, so I'm going to say it again. So what we do is we approve the training providers. So let's just say we got 5, I think it's 5 main training providers right now. So like Red Cross, I really can't even think of their names right now. If we have Red Cross, then what we do is look at Red Cross's approval process. Under them, they may have many, many trainers that teach their approved Red Cross course. But St. John's Ambulance, there we go. St. John Ambulance, that's what I was trying to remember. So like those are the main training providers. They approve their own trainers, but we have to know how they're approving those and approve that process, if that makes sense. The other big change is that they're going to be using the Certification Training Registry for first aid. All the first aid trainers now are going to have access to use the CTR to advertise and use the marketplace and things like that. So WorkplaceNL started implementing this standard in March 2022, and the CTR marketplace for first aid will go live in 2023. In 2023, WorkplaceNL anticipates being open to accept new curriculums for training provider approval. Mine rescue, another standard where there is a lot going on. The mine rescue standard is currently under review and will be a large part of our work plan for the next number of years. This is a big one. Our end goal is that we are going to become self-sufficient in this standard with overseeing and managing this standard on our own. In the past, we have partnered with Ontario Mine Rescue to manage this standard. So we are moving away from that, and we are now we have started developing new procedures to become self-sufficient, and we're going to develop our own training program. So again, that's huge. Our Mark Kiley, Certification Training Specialist, is the lead on this one, but the whole unit will be involved in this. It's a huge initiative. We have developed a technical advisory group. We're in consultation with OSH division, and together with that one big team, we will be developing a provincial curriculum for mine rescue training. Again, another huge deal. Committees, reps, and designates. So as I said, this is another, I guess, big project that's going on. It's been happening in 2022. It will be effective in 2023. The standard itself will be coming to in effect in January of 2023. The change in this standard has resulted from the new Prime program. I'm just going to have a few words about the new Prime program. I'm not going to get too much into detail about it, but I just want you to understand, I guess, the link between the Prime program and this standard changing, because Kathy Whiffen is doing a Prime program presentation in the Symposium, so that will be available if you want to learn more about the Prime program. But basically, Prime is changing. New Prime program is coming. It's moving away. There will no longer be categories of small, medium, large. It will be categories of like a Path 1, Path 2, Path 3. With the Path 1 employers, which are will basically is the equivalent of our old small employers. It's those employers that have less than 10 workers in the workplace and are only required to have a worker health and safety representative or designate in the workplace. So for those Path 1 employers, we needed to have a course that would give them an equivalency of their rep or designate training. So currently, as you know, or maybe some of you don't know, but currently the standard is a 2-day training and it's for committees, reps, and designates. So basically what we're doing with the new standard is we're splitting it apart. We're going to have a level 1 and a level 2. So our level 1 is going to go hand in hand with our prime Path 1, and it'll be the training requirement for those Path 1 employers who are required to have a rep or designate. We will transition all the existing trainers for this standard into teaching the new standard. You will have to complete a course content review in order to do that, but you won't have to do a trainer assessment or anything like that. We will transition all you guys into this, and when we release the new courses. All existing training certificates will also remain valid until their expiry. So it's not eliminating any of the existing training certificates. If you have a valid OHS committee certificate, it will remain valid until the expiry date. So basically the changes mean there will be a level 1 and a level 2. The level 1 is a committee rep designate training. If you complete level 1, you will have a certification training. You will have a certification training for worker health and safety representative and designate. If you go on to do level 2, then you will have certification training standard for committee members. Students will complete level 1 in order to complete level 2. So level 1 is a prerequisite for level 2. So basically we got it split in two. And those small employers, Path 1 prime employers, will only have to do level 1 if they're required to have representative or designate in the workplace. You'll only go as far as level 1. For the rest of the prime program, the Path 2, the Path 3, the employers with 10 or more, you will have to have your workers complete the level 2 to have a valid committee member certification training. So hopefully this makes sense. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me afterwards. Changes to the standard. So it's broken into level 1, level 2. Each of these are still 1 day, 8 hours each. So it's broken in, it's split right down the middle. It's currently 2 days. Now level 1 is 1 day, level 2 is 1 day. Trainers must instruct a minimum of 1 course for each level. So if you're an approved trainer, like I said, we will transition you in. All you got to do is watch the course content review that we'll be having come out in December and January for these courses. But currently in the standards, it says you have to teach 1 course per year, and that 1 course is 2 days. So with the new standard, you will have to instruct a minimum of 1 level 1 and 1 level 2. So it's still equivalent really because you're still teaching 2 days, which is what you have to teach now. The maximum class size is changing. It's currently 20 and that will be reduced to 15. And again, like I mentioned earlier, there will actually be a virtual delivery option added. So we again will ask you to apply to teach virtually because we'll just want to confirm that your platform requirements meet the requirements of the training standard. Okay. We're getting through it. We're almost done. If anybody wants to take a micro break, stretch up, move around, this is probably a good time to do it. I'll just keep talking. Changes to the standard continued. So it's still good for 3 years. You will recertify after 3 years. So like I said, if you have a certificate now, it's still valid until that expiry date. you can still recertify with the online half-day course if you have a valid certificate right now. That half-day online recert is not going anywhere. That's still going to be there. So if you have a valid certificate, you're just going to do your recert as per normal. And you may never do these new courses, the level 1, level 2. The only people that will do this level 1, level 2 is anybody who needs a new certificate or doesn't have an existing certificate. That's going to be the transition process. There's also another part to the transition process, which is relatively new, but I will explain it to you today as well. Although the new standard is coming in effect in January of 2022, level 1 will be ready to go and available for trainers to teach as of January 1, 2022. Level 2 won't be officially released until later in Q1 of 2023. Well, so level 1 will be available January 1st, but we will have a short transition period that trainers will be able to teach the old course for Q1. You can also teach that new level 1, and then during Q1, we're going to bring in that level 2. But during the transition process, you will still have the ability to teach the old course. So transition process, level 1, coming January 1st, you can teach level 1 or you can teach the old course. Then during Q1, we're going to be bringing in level 2. At that time, you can then start, once you're up and ready, you'll teach your level 1, level 2, and you'll just disregard your old course. That, I guess, the end date, it will be the end of quarter 1. After Q1, you won't be able to teach the old course. Okay, so lots of information for you today. Again, just wanted to give you an idea of what it is we do. We got a whole lot of work going on in every standard, very busy. If any of it is applicable to you and you have questions, please reach out to us. We have the ohs.training email that we respond to. Certainly feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on our website. Hopefully you got a little bit more familiar with the updates to all the training standards and all the exciting things we have going on. Hopefully you'll be intrigued now to listen to Mark's presentation on the new fall calculations, and maybe attend Kathy Whiffin's presentation on the new Prime program. So we have a lot of new things and a lot of exciting things coming for 2023. Thank you very much.